Hey, Mark Westcott here with Juanita Maiden. Welcome everyone to Estate and Succession Mastery. Great plant, Juanita.
Thank you very much. I do my best to keep it alive.
That's right. We keep moving the backgrounds around each week, and just adds a bit of spice,
That's right.
like the week I was parked in some street in the back of Whoop Whoop somewhere. But hey, look, we did such a good job on the document manifest last week. This is the list of documents that we prompt people with each year that they should keep a copy of. That we only got anyway. We got halfway through it last week, and so here we go again this week, and we'll finish off. Hopefully, we'll get through.
Hopefully,
we'll get through the other half. But this is really I'd like your take on this one, Ed, but it's really just it's a prompt list for us when we're reviewing stuff with clients to be able to sit down and say, hey guys, have you stored copies of these documents, because it's just going to make such a difference to those left behind if they can easily access these documents, and certainly so that they're up to date. Any thoughts, Juanita?
Yes. So that's the key point, is making it easier for those that have to administer your estate after you pass away. And I cannot emphasize enough what a difference it can make if all this stuff's in one place, easy to find, and your executor or your family don't have to go searching through the old tubs in the storeroom or dusting off the documents in the drawer or whatnot. And all of these are important because at some stage, usually, they'll be needed in the administration of your estate. So it's just about making it easier for everyone that's left behind.
That was Fabulon, wasn't it? Makes life easier. Or are you too young for that add-on too, mate?
Too young for that one.
Fabulon was an ironing spray, makes ironing easier. Anyway, forget it.
Okay.
I'm showing my age here. Hey, but look, I also thought today we'd start off with, Juanita, is let's talk about you. Let's talk about what it is that you do, your role with Murdoch's, and your experience and what you love doing the most there in regard to estates and so on.
Yeah, great. I'm a estate and wills and estates lawyer. I specialise in that area these days, and I'm part of the team at Murdoch's, and we do estate planning, administration of deceased estates, helping out executors and families, and also estate litigation. So there's different parts to this area of the law. And we have a great team in Brisbane and in Toowoomba, and that's all we do, and we love it. It's a specialty area, and it's a great area because you can really help families and make things better for them going forward.
No, fantastic. Yes, you do have a great team there, and excuse me, you guys win the Doyle Award or something, Doyle's Award, or
that's right,
for the estate planning division. Is that right? That's a big deal.
Hot off the press, Mark. Yes, we a number of our lawyers are named in the industry Doyle's Guide, which is for the leading lawyers and law firms in Queensland. And in this area of wills and estates, we are one of the leading law firms in estate planning and estate litigation, and 3 of our lawyers are all named in that list, Tom, Leanne and myself. So I think that's a result from doing what we love and enjoying it and being good at it. And
that's right, and being good at it. Has that just been released again for this year, has it?
The estate litigation was released today. Hot off the press, Mark. Hot off the press.
How did I know that? Must have been like ESP, because I wasn't aware that it had come out again today, but I knew you were involved again last year. So fantastic. Anyway, look, let's get down to the document manifest. So as I say, we went through, and I'll just quickly recap on some of these. The ones that we did last week was making sure you've got a blueprint of everything. You've got your tactical team, the first 90 days, Dear Mary letter, and all those sorts of things, what you want to happen for your funeral, what we call the Leave Well communique, a saving grace folder, making sure you've got copies of all the important documents for all the family members, enduring powers of attorney, buy-sell agreements, financial planning reviews, the importance of having a financial planning review there for those left behind as well, and making sure you've stored those safely. And one of the things we talked about was whether or not you do actually a video of intentions for your family, the Dear Mary letter that we've talked about before, and actually using more modern technology to record those sorts of things. Because I think, as I finished off with, when people die, those left behind run around searching and ringing the deceased phone all the time just to listen to their voice and so on. It's just such an important part, is being able to leave something positive for the rest of your family in regard to the memories and thoughts that they'd want to have left from you. So let's move on from there. These are the rest of the issues that it's really important to have copies of in your vault, so to speak, for those left behind. And first one today is birth certificate, and this really is important, and I'll let you go on a bit more about this, but your birth certificate is actually really important from a claiming against life insurance policies, if for all the other reasons I'm sure you'll come up with. But when you're claiming on your life insurance, or when your family is, the insurance company will want copies of your birth certificate, death certificate, and so on. But you've probably got other reasons why this is a good idea as well.
Well, I do. Often what I found practically is often after someone's passed away, there's lots of forms usually to be filled out, and often you'll be asked for birth dates and dates of death, and just having that easy to access, particularly birth certificates, is very, very handy, place of birth, date of birth. But I guess from a non-legal point of view, I think these documents are amazingly valuable just from a family point of view, because the history that comes with these birth certificates, it's amazing to look back on the family tree and the generations before and where the people were born. And so even if, not from a legal point of view, I think they're really important pieces of family history that should be carefully kept and passed on.
Absolutely. The next issue is marriage certificate. Some people need a folder for this, but hopefully some only have one marriage certificate that they need to refer on death. That was a joke.
Yeah, I don't want to offend anyone. Hopefully you don't need a folder. Okay. Just maybe
I'm just making fun of myself here, Juanita. That's okay. That's okay.
This is very important if in a practical circumstance where someone may have got married but not changed their name on their license, or vice versa, may have changed their name but be slightly different to what's on their marriage certificate. So sometimes particularly if we're getting a grant of probate, or we need to prove some sort of ID, or prove you're a beneficiary in a will, for example, these are all examples where you might need to produce a marriage certificate, basically to verify that you are the person that is named in a document, even though your name may have changed or may appear to be different.
Yeah. Okay, look, I'm going to ask a question around this next one. When you talk about all the legal documents that people need to leave behind, wills, enduring powers of attorney, and so on, how do you know which is the last will? I mean, apart obviously from looking at the dates on them, but I mean, what if someone has made a will and it's with Harry Logg's solicitor, and no one knows about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there's no, some people are surprised to know that there's no register of wills, no formal place where you can go to, like the Registrar of Births, Deaths and Marriages, to find people's wills. So the answer, I suppose, is if you don't know the right place to look, it's a very difficult job. Usually you can, via a few different ways, you can track the last will. So usually you'll know the solicitor that the person used during their lifetime, or the solicitor in the area that they lived, or their family used. So it's not usual, but sometimes happens that someone has no idea where the will is. Also, in the process of applying for a grant of probate, for example, and for other reasons in estate administration, you might advertise. So you might advertise with the Queensland Law Reporter or in the paper, or make inquiries with a public trustee, and that's designed to call out any creditors, but also any people that might know of a later will. So there's a few steps to be taken to try to confirm that it is a last will, but it's not foolproof, I guess.
Yep.
That's why we say put it in here, put it in the document list.
Well, that's right. But so, for example, someone's in Sydney, they're locked up for 2 weeks, and while they're down there, they go, gee, I must do my, they're thinking about mortality, and they go, well, I must do another will. So they go and speak to, they ring up the guy down the road and they get a new will done. So there are chances that no one would know.
There's a chance, yeah. So we'll always say to our clients, make sure you tell your executor that you've named in the will, make sure that they know their executor, make sure they know where the will is, so someone does know.
Yeah, there's a business opportunity there, isn't there, to create a register of wills, or because there just seems to me a hole that somebody could write a will and nobody ever knew about it until it was too late. So having said that, and you may not know the answer to this question, if a will was distributed, and then a solicitor went, holy mackerel, I saw something in the paper the other day, and he turned up with a more current will. Is there a precedent for someone who's already distributed assets of a deceased and found that it wasn't the final wishes?
There's
Is there something you know about, or?
Yeah, that's right. So there's a few steps that an executor can take to protect themselves in that circumstance. Often they'll be advised to wait 6 months at least, sometimes 9 months, depending if there's any notice being given, but at least 6 months before they distribute the estate proceeds. And by doing that and by waiting that time and by taking a few steps that I mentioned before, it protects that executor. If at a later stage, a later will turns up and all of a sudden you've got different beneficiaries and the money's already been distributed. So if you're an executor and you're in that situation, your lawyer should be giving you that sort of advice for the steps to take to protect yourself that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Next topic is vehicle registrations. And I mean, look, we've put a number of things in here that, you might say, well, why would you bother with that? But I mean, the simple reason is that a lot of times people don't know what ownership the cars are actually registered in, do they?
That's right. And this is a fiddly little thing. After you pass away, you need to, or someone needs to go, your executor needs to go to the Department of Transport and fill out the forms. So to have the rego details all there very handy makes a huge difference, because sometimes dealing with our friends at the Department of Transport is tough at the best of times, although they've got a lot better. But, if you're waiting in the line there and you've got a big form to fill out, just to have those details handy is so helpful.
Okay. Now, next is loan or mortgage contract. So if let's just say the executor didn't have access to all loan, mortgage document, contracts and so on, well, mortgage would be straightforward because you can't sell it or transfer it if there's a mortgage. But if there's just a free loan that is involved for the deceased and nobody knows about it, and once again, the money's all been distributed, what happens to that loan?
This is a
whistle Dixie, or?
Well, this is the reason why we advise, particularly in the bank of mum and dad, lots of parents these days might loan some money or want to help out their children to get ahead. We would always recommend, for various reasons, to document that loan, and it can be on friendly terms, but just so it is documented, people know what was arranged. It can be dealt with after you die and in your will. And also for asset protection purposes too, which is probably another topic. But if you have loan money, really important to document it and to keep it with all these formal documents so it's dealt with correctly or the way that you want it after you die.
Yeah, and that raises the whole issue of parents giving loans to their children rather than gifts, doesn't it? Because, a gift to a child is then at risk of failed marriages and so on for that child. Whereas a parent loaning money is obviously you can put some protection around that. Absolutely. Obvious one here, insurance policies, life insurance, general insurance, and all those sorts of things. Details there. This once again is one of those issues of, people really do have things in shoe boxes, or they pay it and they throw it in the bin. So, there is no record of necessarily all the insurances and so on. So once again, it's just good housekeeping, isn't it, to make sure all the insurance and so on is noted somewhere.
Yeah, so the obvious one is life insurance, which is dealt with on your death, but also house and contents insurance. So if you were to pass away and the house and contents is in your name, then it needs to be dealt with and it needs to be updated into the name of your estate or consequently a beneficiary. So again, that paperwork so important to have on hand to make that. That's like a really practical little step that needs to be taken, and having the details there very handy.
Okay, next one, superannuation statement, which really follows on anyway, and similar to the life insurance and so on. You need to understand, but superannuation, because of how it can be treated, depending on whether there's binding nominations in place or whatever, it's important that the executors, the rest of the family, understand what's involved in the superannuation fund. Yeah,
huge part of people's estates these days, superannuation. So, and a huge part of the estate administration. So, we'd like to see the latest statement, obviously who your superannuation's with, and in that statement will be lots of important information such as taxable and non-taxable parts. And I know you start to glaze over, Mark, when I start getting all technical with taxable references, but and also
very important stuff.
Most importantly, probably here though, is the nomination. So as part of your statement, it'll let us know who you have nominated to receive your super on your death, which is a huge step as part of the administration that's dealt with.
Okay, so that's superannuation. Now, one of the things, for years when I've, been talking to clients and they say, oh yeah, I've got some shares here, and I've got some Telstra shares, I've got some AMP shares or whatever, and most people don't have a share trader as such, do they? That they can go to, and it's like a summary of all the shares that they bought. I mean, people that have big portfolios obviously do, but there's just a hell of a lot of people out there that have a little parcel of shares that someone gave them when they were kids or whatever. And how do you necessarily track all those down if there's not an advisor, if they don't have a financial advisor that has taken details of all these little share packages? Is there a place you can go centrally to say, okay, what are the shares held in the name of Fred Bloggs?
Well, there is with company shares, Mark, but I suppose as far as hobby online trading, for example, that makes it a little bit hard for those that might do their late at night their online trading as a hobby at home. So it certainly makes things a lot easier by having that documentation, especially if you do that yourself as a trader and not necessarily with an advisor. If you had shares for companies, there certainly is the register with ASIC, and we're talking shares in private companies now. In that aspect, that's pretty easy to search. Yeah.
Okay. So that is easy to track down. That's good. Look, obviously, copies of accounts, accounting, tax returns, and so on. I mean, that's an obvious part of what's going to be required as part of the whole, estate distribution process, and understanding what entities there are, and is there any tax owing, or what's the status of the up-to-date tax returns or not. That's a key part for you guys, isn't it, to understand what's owned, what structures there are, and so on.
Yeah, and also what's owed. So in a lot of accounting financial statements, we'll see, for individuals and for entities, different loans and unpaid entitlements, and they all need to be addressed as part of the administration. Also, a lot of people don't realise that final tax returns need to be done post-death. So an individual tax return, firstly, for 1 July to the date of death, and then also an estate tax return for the period of time after. So the accountant who prepares that tax return for your executor is going to be asking for this information. So really handy to be able to hand that over at that stage.
Okay. Now, I've got down here travel documents, and I mean, in some ways, when we're talking about tickets to go overseas, we're talking about passports and, visas, all those sorts of things. What happens to a passport when someone passes on?
Nothing.
Is there a process? Is it
no,
like you're supposed, not supposed to notify anyone?
No. Good question, and it's never come up, and I've never seen a particular process. But obviously, as part of registration of death, etc., the relevant government agencies are notified. So you can't go travelling on someone's passport if you look similar to them, because it's going to come up with all sorts of red lights. But as far as the actual document, it usually is retained by the family for sentimental purposes.
I just thought there might have been a marketing opportunity there, selling passports.
No. Stick to the day job, Mark.
Stick to my day job. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, memberships. Now, there's a lot of clubs and so on where membership details would be important for those left behind. I mean, people, and look, people don't necessarily broadcast clubs and associations they may be members of. So having a list of any memberships and so on. One, they may have invested money, like there might be a golf club or something where they've got a bond, and on death they can trade that in for whatever that value is. Sports clubs, flying clubs, whatever. If someone's made an investment, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, whatever, to make sure those details are in there so that your executors know that to go to that golf club, to go to whoever and advise of the situation and maybe be able to get a refund of those membership fees.
Yeah, well, absolutely a refund, and it's also nice to tidy that up as such, because otherwise you can, the people that are left behind can spend the next year opening their letterboxes with things popping in there for renewals and for newsletters, etc., and which isn't pleasant. It can be difficult. So to be able to address all those sort of memberships at that point in time and tidy that up is a nice step to take, I think.
Yeah, we'll come back to email accounts and all that in a minute. But one of the final things here, and we've touched on this before in the Dear Mary letter, but just any letters of wishes, in other words, specific things that someone might want for their children. They'd say, look, whatever you do, I've left an amount of money. Send the kids off to, private school or public school or whatever their particular wish is, or, I want them to have the opportunity to go to that. We've talked about going to university in the States. I want the kids to have that opportunity, whatever it is, whatever the wishes are. This is your opportunity to make sure that you encourage people to write down those sorts of things that would be in a letter of wishes. And do you find, in your work with deceased estates, Juanita, do many people go to this level of trouble? And there's two parts to the question. One, how many people do it? And two, how joyous and wonderful is it for the families of those that do?
I think the answer to the first question is no, not many do. And I suppose they just haven't turned their mind to it or been suggested to turn their mind to it. So our advice, especially if there's young children involved and you're nominating a guardian for those children, it's really essential to leave something like that behind, a letter of wishes to your guardian, which, as you said, and we've spoken about this in another session, expressing how you would want your child to be brought up and the things that are important to you if you weren't here. So when people explain that this is something that's available, then I've never seen anyone that didn't want to put it in place in that situation.
Yeah, and the people that are left behind really appreciate this sort of direction, don't they? So
yes, absolutely.
Especially if mum and dad both die and you've got guardians of the kids, just some direction certainly for the guardians in how you'd want the kids raised and so on.
Right.
Now, the last one I've got here, and you may find this random, but it's actually photos for funerals. Many times, when we've been to funerals and people are doing a slideshow of the person's life and so on, I'm actually starting to encourage people to think about putting together starting to store, and I've had a few clients do it where they're storing the photos. So, photos from when they were kids and their parents and the children while they were still young and growing up and so on. I mean, all those sorts of things make a difference at funerals, I think. So I think that's there's still an opportunity to be able to put your mind towards, what do you want at your funeral? What sort of photos do you want? What sort of music do you want played? What sort of flowers do you want? And so on. We won't go into that. But all those sorts of things are important too. And not many people do it, but those that do, I think those that are left behind really appreciate that. There's one actually in the last few years I've added in, it's not on the list here, but social media details. People have all sorts of accounts on and it's not just social media, it's subscriptions to news services or whatever, that, the internet being what it is these days. And there's nothing worse, and I'll start with this end, is that what happens to people who have all these subscriptions going on because we're becoming more a subscription type economy, lifestyle, and they might have subscribed to the Dollar Shaver Club. They might have subscribed to, to a news, the couriermail.com and all these sorts of things. And how do you advise people, one, to, I don't know if you can actually keep a list of all those sorts of things, but I guess the quickest way is to cancel the credit cards. But certainly in regard to social media accounts and so on, I think in fairness to the deceased, you need to be able to go in and shut down their Twitter, their Facebook, their Instagram, and all those sorts of things. How do people go about that? And are you aware of, if no provision has been made and nobody knows what the passwords are, how do you shut down Facebook for someone who's died?
Usually in all those social media platforms, they're each unique and they have their own requirements or authorization levels. So if you go into settings for most of those platforms, like your Instagram and your Facebook, Twitter, etc., there is often a section which allows you to control what happens on your death and who can access it. That is advisable because it makes life a lot easier in that circumstance. If that isn't done, then obviously the family or the executor will need to communicate with those respective platforms to achieve what they want to achieve, which is normally to freeze it in some way or close it down. Some of the platforms, I think perhaps Facebook, you can change the status to a memorial page or that sort of thing. So when you're hanging around this weekend and you're scrolling down on your phone, go and have a look in the settings and see what it lets you do.
Okay, I may see if there's something else more interesting to do, but I'll take your word on that one. So, Juanita, look, that's it as far as our list goes that I put together. But I always keep coming back to the phrase, it's the unknown unknowns that sometimes come up and grab us from behind. So, I'd certainly welcome anyone else that's watching what we're talking about today. If you've got thoughts about other things that are valuable for when someone passes, if there's other things that a person should keep in their vault, so to speak, an update each year, then we'd certainly welcome that feedback. But I hope everyone's found this valuable. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's just a way to say, well, okay, these are the sorts of things that are just going to make life so much easier when you're gone, for those that are left behind. Any final comments before we sign off?
No, I think there's quite a lot of things on that list, but they're all, quick checks and quick ticks and easy enough to put in place. And collating all that stuff together, I can't even describe how easier it will make things for people after your death, both your family and your executors and your advisors as well.
Yep. Okay, well, thanks, Juanita, again today, and look forward to catching up with you again next week. Next week, Juanita's got a very exciting topic, which we're going to keep as a surprise until next week, but it's only because
it's my choice.
I'm not sure. It's your choice next week, so we're going to be working on a topic for Juanita for next week. Look forward to seeing you all then, and thanks for coming along, and hope our sessions are creating value for you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Juanita.
Thanks, everyone.